We are taught that to do well with money, we need to understand math, study charts, and master complex financial formulas. We believe that financial success is a hard science, a world of spreadsheets and data where the smartest person with the most information wins. But what if that's all wrong? What if the most important factor in building wealth has very little to do with how smart you are and everything to do with how you behave? Today, we are going to explore this radical idea by diving into one of the most important books ever written about our relationship with money, The Psychology of Money, Timeless Lessons on Wealth, Greed, and Happiness by Morgan Housel. This isn't a book about what to invest in or how to build a budget. It's a book about what goes on inside your head when you try to manage money. And understanding this, truly understanding it, is the most important financial skill you can ever learn. To show you just how powerful our psychology is, let me tell you two true stories. The first is about a man named Ronald Reed. He was a janitor and a gas station attendant his entire life. He bought a two-bedroom house for $12,000 and lived there until he died at age 92. To everyone who knew him, he was just a humble man from rural Vermont whose main hobby was chopping firewood. The second story is about Richard Fuscone. He was the exact opposite, a Harvard-educated finance executive with an MBA from the University of Chicago. He was so successful in his career at Merrill Lynch that he retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. He was a man who had it all, including an 18,000-square-foot mansion with 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, and a monthly upkeep cost of over $90,000. Now, in 2014, both of these men made headlines. Richard Fuscone, the brilliant finance executive, declared bankruptcy. His mansion was sold at a foreclosure auction for 75% less than it was worth. That same year, Ronald Reed, the janitor, died, leaving behind an $8 million fortune, most of which he gifted to his local hospital and library. How is this possible? How can a janitor with no formal financial training amass a fortune, while a Harvard-educated executive goes broke? The answer lies at the heart of this book. Financial success is not a hard science. It's a soft skill, where how you behave is more important than what you know. A genius who loses control of their emotions can be a financial disaster. And ordinary people with no financial education can be wealthy if they have a handful of behavioral skills that have nothing to do with formal measures of intelligence. So, let's begin our journey to understand these skills and uncover the strange and powerful psychology of money. The very first and crucial idea Morgan Housel wants us to understand is this: no one is crazy. People do some crazy things with money, but no one is actually crazy. Every financial decision a person makes, no matter how strange it seems to you, makes sense to them in that moment. They tell themselves a story about what they're doing and why, and that story has been shaped by their own unique personal experiences with the world.
Think about it. People from different generations, raised by parents with different values, born into different economies, experiencing different job markets and different degrees of luck, learn very different lessons. The person who grew up in poverty thinks about risk and reward in ways the child of a wealthy banker could never fathom. The person who grew up when inflation was skyrocketing will have a completely different view of money than someone who grew up with stable prices. The stockbroker who lost everything in the Great Depression experienced something the tech worker basking in the glory of the 1990s tech boom can't possibly imagine. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but they might account for 80% of how you think the world works. And what you've experienced is infinitely more compelling and persuasive than what you learn secondhand from a book or a chart. You can study what it was like to lose everything during the Great Depression, but you don't have the emotional scars of those who actually lived it. And those who lived it can't understand why someone today would be so complacent about risking their money in the stock market. We see the world through different lenses, shaped by the tiny sliver of reality we've personally experienced. This is why equally smart people can disagree on everything from how to invest, to what to prioritize, to how much risk is appropriate. What seems crazy to you makes perfect sense to me. This idea is the foundation for understanding almost all financial behavior. It explains why people buy lottery tickets, take on too much debt, or sell their stocks in a panic. They're not crazy. They're just making decisions based on their own unique mental model of how the world works, a model that has been written by their own history, their own fears, and their own desires. This leads us to the second powerful force that we often fail to properly respect: luck and risk. Luck and risk are siblings. They are both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort. The world is too complex to allow 100% of your actions to dictate 100% of your outcomes. NYU professor Scott Galloway has a brilliant way of putting it. Nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. Let's look at the story of Bill Gates. Gates is staggeringly smart and hardworking, but he also had a 1 in a million dose of luck. In 1968, he went to Lakeside School, one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer. At a time when most universities didn't have a computer as advanced, a 13-year-old Bill Gates had unlimited access to one. This allowed him and his classmate, Paul Allen, to become computing experts while they were still teenagers. Gates himself admits, if there had been no Lakeside, there had been no Microsoft. His skill was undeniable, but his success was magnified by a lucky break that was literally 1 in a million. Now, let me tell you about Gates's best friend at Lakeside, Kent Evans. By Gates's own account, Evans was just as skilled with computers and shared his endless business ambition. They planned on going to college together and starting a company. Kent Evans could easily have been a founding partner of Microsoft, but it would never happen. Kent died in a mountaineering accident before he graduated high school. The odds of being killed on a mountain in high school are roughly 1 in a million.
Bill Gates experienced 1 in a million luck. Kent Evans experienced 1 in a million risk. The same force, with the same magnitude, working in opposite directions. For every Bill Gates, there is a Kent Evans who was just as skilled and driven, but ended up on the other side of the roulette wheel. When we study success, we often focus on individuals, especially extreme examples like billionaires and CEOs. But this is dangerous. The more extreme the outcome, the more likely it was influenced by the extreme ends of luck or risk. And luck is not a repeatable strategy. Instead of focusing on specific individuals, we should focus on broad patterns. Trying to emulate Warren Buffett's exact investment success is difficult because his results are so extreme that luck almost certainly played a huge role. But realizing that people who have control over their time tend to be happier is a broad and common enough observation that you can actually do something with it. When we judge others, attributing their success to luck can feel jealous. When we judge ourselves, attributing our own success to luck can feel demoralizing. But respecting the power of both luck and risk is essential. It teaches us humility. It allows us to forgive ourselves for our failures. And it reminds us that when things are going extremely well, we are not invincible, because risk, luck's cousin, can turn our story around just as quickly. Now let's talk about one of the most dangerous concepts in finance, the idea of never enough. Author Kurt Vonnegut was once at a party hosted by a billionaire hedge fund manager. He pointed out to his friend, the novelist Joseph Heller, that their host had made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from his wildly popular novel Catch-22 over its entire history. Heller's response was a masterclass in wisdom. He said, "Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough. Enough. It's a simple word, but it's a concept that some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world never grasp. And the inability to feel enough is a gateway to ruin. Take the story of Rajat Gupta. Born into poverty in India, he rose to become the CEO of McKinsey, the world's most prestigious consulting firm. He sat on the boards of major corporations and worked with Bill Gates on philanthropic projects. By 2008, he was reportedly worth $100 million. He could have done anything he wanted for the rest of his life, but what he wanted was to be a billionaire. His desire for more, for moving into the billionaire circle, led him to start a lucrative side hustle, insider trading. He leaked confidential information from Goldman Sachs board meetings to a hedge fund manager. The tips led to millions in illegal profits. It was easy money. And for prosecutors, it was an even easier case.
Gupta, the man who had everything, risked it all and lost, ending up in prison with his reputation irrevocably destroyed. What drives someone who has hundreds of millions to risk everything for more? It's a broken sense of enough. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. If your expectations rise with your results, you are running on a treadmill that never ends. One step forward in wealth pushes the goalpost of your desires 2 steps forward. You constantly feel like you're falling behind, and the only way to catch up is to take on more and more risk. The primary driver of this is social comparison. Modern capitalism is a machine for generating both wealth and envy. There's always someone who has more. A rookie baseball player making $500,000 a year is, by any definition, rich. But if he plays on the same team as a superstar with a $430 million contract, he feels broke. And that superstar might compare himself to a hedge fund manager who made $770 million in a single year. And that hedge fund manager might compare himself to Jeff Bezos. The ceiling of social comparison is so high that no one can ever reach it. The only way to win is to not play the game. It's to accept that you might have enough, even if it's less than those around you. Enough doesn't mean you have to be a minimalist. Enough is simply realizing that the opposite, an insatiable appetite for more, will eventually push you to the point of regret. This brings us to one of the most crucial distinctions in all of finance: getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. These are two completely different skills. Getting wealthy requires taking risks, being optimistic, and putting yourself out there. But keeping your wealth requires the opposite. It requires humility and the fear that what you've made can be taken away from you just as fast. It requires frugality and an acceptance that at least some of your past success is attributable to luck, so it can't be relied upon to continue indefinitely. Jesse Livermore was the greatest stock trader of his era. In the crash of 1929, he made the equivalent of $3 billion in today's money by betting the market would fall. He was a genius at getting wealthy, but he was also overflowing with confidence, and he made larger and larger bets until he eventually lost everything and took his own life. He was great at getting rich, but terrible at staying rich. Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, tells a similar story about an early partner of theirs named Rick Guerin. Guerin was just as smart as Buffett and Munger, but he was in a hurry. He was heavily leveraged with borrowed money. When the market crashed in the 1970s, he was forced to sell his shares at the bottom directly to Warren Buffett. Charlie, Warren, and Rick were all equally skilled at getting wealthy, but Warren and Charlie had the added skill of staying wealthy. And over time, that is the skill that matters most. The single word that summarizes financial success is survival. The ability to stick around for a long time without wiping out or being forced to give up is what makes the biggest difference. Compounding only works if you can give an asset years and years to grow, and that requires surviving all the unpredictable ups and downs. Applying a survival mindset means 3 things. 1, more than you want big returns, you want to be financially unbreakable. If you're unbreakable, you can stick around long enough for compounding to work its magic. 2, planning is important, but the most important part of any plan is to plan on the plan not going according to plan. A good plan embraces room for error. And 3, a barbelled personality is vital. You should be optimistic about the future, but paranoid about what will prevent you from getting to the future. If these stories and timeless lessons from the psychology of money are already changing the way you think about your own financial life, and you're eager to compile even more wisdom from the world's best books, then I invite you to join our community of learners. Take a moment to hit that subscribe button for BookPiler. It ensures you never miss a summary, and it's the best way to support our mission of bringing these powerful ideas to everyone. Thank you for being here. Now, let's explore a concept that our brains are just not built to understand: the power of compounding. We're wired to think in linear terms. If I ask you to calculate 8 plus 8 plus 8, you can do it in a second. But if I ask you to calculate 8 times 8 times 8, your head starts to hurt. Compounding is counterintuitive, and because because it's not intuitive, we often ignore its potential.
There are over 2,000 books about how Warren Buffett built his fortune, but most of them miss the simplest fact. Buffett's fortune isn't just due to being a good investor. It's due to being a good investor since he was literally a child. As Housel writes, at the time of the book's writing, Buffett's net worth was $84.5 billion. Of that, $84.2 billion was accumulated after his 50th birthday. His skill is investing, but his secret is time. Let's run a thought experiment. What if Buffett had started investing at age 30 with a respectable $25,000 instead of as a child? And let's say he still generated his extraordinary 22% annual returns, but retired at age 60 to play golf with his grandkids. What would his net worth be today? Not $84.5 billion. It would be about $11.9 million, 99.9% less. All of his financial success can be tied to the base he built in his early years and the longevity he maintained for decades. This is the power of compounding. Good investing isn't necessarily about earning the highest returns, because the highest returns are often one-off hits that can't be repeated. It's about earning pretty good returns that you can stick with for the longest period of time. That's when compounding runs wild. Another powerful but often misunderstood concept is what Housel calls tails you win. A lot of things in business and investing work this way. Long tails, the rare outlier events, have a tremendous influence. A small number of events account for the majority of outcomes. Take venture capital. A VC firm might make 50 investments. They expect half to fail, a dozen to do okay, and one or two to be absolute grand slams that drive 100% of the fund's returns. This isn't just true for risky startups. J.P. Morgan found that since 1980, the overall returns of the entire Russell 3000 index, a broad collection of public companies, were driven by just 7% of the component companies. 40% of the companies were effectively failures. Most were duds, and a tiny handful were extraordinary winners. Anything that is huge, profitable, or famous is the result of a tail event. And as investors, we have to understand this. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. It's not about being right or wrong that's important. It's about how much money you make when you're right and how much you lose when you're wrong. Your success as an investor will be determined by how you behave during the punctuated moments of terror, not the years spent on cruise control. When you accept that tails drive everything, you realize that it's normal for a lot of things to go wrong, and you understand that you don't have to be right all the time. You just have to survive long enough to let the few things that go very right work their magic. This brings us to a paradox. We spend so much time chasing wealth, but what is it that we're really after? The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. The greatest intrinsic value of money, and this cannot be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time. More than your salary, more than the size of your house, more than the prestige of your job, control over doing what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, is the broadest lifestyle variable that makes people happy. A small amount of wealth gives you the ability to take a few days off when you're sick. A bit more means you can wait for a good job to come around after a layoff, instead of taking the first one you find. 6 months of emergency savings means not being terrified of your boss. Using your money to buy time and options has a lifestyle benefit that few luxury goods can ever compete with. So why aren't people happier, given that society is, on average, wealthier than ever? Because we've used our greater wealth to buy bigger and better stuff, but we've simultaneously given up more control over our time. Our jobs have shifted from manual labor to knowledge work. Our tool is our head, which never leaves us. We are constantly connected, and it feels like we're working 24/7. We've lost a degree of autonomy that is a key ingredient to happiness. The ability to do what you want is priceless. So what about all the stuff we buy to signal our success? This leads to the man-in-the-car paradox. When you see someone driving a nice car, say a Ferrari, you rarely think, wow, the person driving that car is so cool. Instead, you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I am cool. We use other people's wealth as a benchmark for our own desire to be liked and admired. The paradox is that people want wealth to signal to others that they should be liked. But in reality, those other people often bypass admiring you and just use your wealth as a new goal for themselves. The point isn't to abandon the pursuit of wealth or nice things. It's a subtle recognition that if respect and admiration are your goal, you should be careful how you seek it. Humility, kindness, and empathy will bring you more respect than horsepower ever will. This leads to the final critical distinction. Wealth is what you don't see. Rich is a current income. It's visible. A person driving a $100,000 car is rich because they need a certain level of income to afford it. But wealth? Wealth is hidden. Wealth is the income not spent. Wealth is the nice cars not purchased, the diamonds not bought, the watches not worn. Wealth is financial assets that haven't yet been converted into the stuff you see. Its value lies in offering you options, flexibility, and control over your time. People are good at learning by imitation, but the hidden nature of wealth makes it hard to imitate. We can see the rich person's car, but we can't see their restraint or their savings account. This is why it's so hard for many to build wealth. So, how do we actually build it? The answer is shockingly simple, yet so easy to overlook. Building wealth has little to do with your income or investment returns, and lots to do with your savings rate. Your savings rate is the one part of the financial equation that is more in your control than anything else. You can't control next year's stock market returns, but you can control your own frugality. Past a certain level of income, your ability to save is more in your control than you think. Savings can be created by spending less. You can spend less if you desire less, and you will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. Saving, therefore, is more of a psychological skill than a financial one. It's the gap between your ego and your income. Finally, Housel leaves us with a set of simple, actionable lessons to tie everything together. Go out of your way to find humility when things are going right and forgiveness when they go wrong, because it's never as good or as bad as it looks. Manage your money in a way that helps you sleep at night. This is more important than chasing the highest possible returns. If you want to be a better investor, the single most powerful thing you can do is increase your time horizon. Time is what makes compounding work its magic. Become okay with a lot of things going wrong. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. Use money to gain control over your time, as this is the highest dividend it pays. Be nicer and less flashy, and save. Just save. You don't need a specific reason. Savings are a hedge against life's inevitable ability to surprise you at the worst possible moment. Define the cost of success: volatility, fear, doubt, and be willing to pay it. See it as a fee for getting great returns, not a fine for doing something wrong. And finally, respect the mess. Smart, informed, reasonable people can and will disagree about money because they are all playing a slightly different game. There is no single right answer, just the answer that works for you. Understand the game you're playing, and you'll have won half the battle.